Audra. I'll start with Audra. There we go. I'm going to start with Audra. Audra is a transportation planning program manager. She's a proud graduate of Texas A&M University. Audra joined Maricopa Association of Governments in 2015 to facilitate long-range transportation planning efforts for the nation's second largest metropolitan planning organization. Previously, Audra's work included dozens of iconic land use, transportation, and economic development efforts across Arizona and the Southwest. Audra's current focus is leading the extension of the dedicated Maricopa County half-cent sales tax to fund multi-module transportation investments, included in the Momentum and MEG's new regional transportation plan. Welcome, Audra. We're thrilled to have you. All right, now, Mr. Bagley, you were going to help me with the pronunciation of your first name, and I sincerely apologize. I'm going to let you help me with that. But Mr. Bagley is the Regional Analytics Director at the Maricopa Association of Governments. He is responsible for regional socioeconomic data sets, geographic information systems, census activities, population projections and estimates, and the development and maintenance of regional land use models. The Regional Analytics team at MEG has been leading the development of innovative online platforms for displaying socioeconomic and land use and early education maps, along with analytics, supporting planning and economic development needs. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you both on from MEG. We've also invited Gregory Byres with the Arizona Department of Transportation. Gregory graduated from New Mexico State University with a bachelor's in science degree in civil engineering technology. He worked as a consulting engineer on transportation, airport, and utility projects for 10 years, then went back to school, which included course study in geotechnical engineering at the University of Missouri, Rolla, and worked as a geotechnical and materials engineering consultant for 10 years. He started his own engineering consulting firm, which provided design services for transportation, airports, utilities, and development projects for both private and public sectors for about 12 years. After selling his firm, he moved to Arizona and began working for the Arizona Department of Transportation, or ADOT, as some of us call it, as a senior project manager, and then on to the state roadway engineer, the director of multi-module planning division, and currently as deputy director and our state engineer. He's been with ADOT for 8 years. So welcome, everybody. We're thrilled to have you. And as I mentioned, this is really going to be great information for everybody as we get an all-star lineup. So we're going to start off with MEG. And Audra, would you tell us a little bit about MEG? I think we have people probably who are not familiar with all the things that MEG does for our valley.
Well, thank you on behalf of the Maricopa Association of Governments, Anubhav, who's joining me today for the invitation here to speak with you all. Maricopa Association of Governments is the metropolitan planning organization and council of governments for the greater Phoenix metropolitan area. So think of really central Arizona containing our planning area. Our responsibilities include transportation planning, environmental services and air quality planning, socioeconomic projections, as Anubhav will talk a little bit more about later, as well as considerable amount of modeling and technical analysis, which really helps to drive really good decision makings for particularly public sector work, as well as, of course, partnership and development activity. MAG is over 50 years old, and chief amongst our focuses right now, as mentioned already, is the extension of Proposition 400, the dedicated half-cent sales tax that has been the driving force of the transportation infrastructure you see here in the region over the course of the last 40 years. First established by voters in 1985 and has really led to the growth, prosperity, and quality of life we all enjoy today. It's set for expiration at the end of 2025, and we've been working with our mayors and community leaders well over 5 years now in developing a long-range plan to be able to extend that dedicated half-cent for another generation worth of transportation investments.
Thank you, Audra. Gregory, can you share with us, because there's been so much new development in the Valley, please share the overall plan with regards to our freeway system in the Phoenix area. And I know we'll get into some of the more details as we go through the meeting today, but just kind of an overall view of what ADOT sees for our growth in the Valley.
So ADOT has a little different role when it comes to planning and programming within the Valley itself. That's actually left up to MAG. What we do is we actually do, once MAG comes up with a project and it's programmed, we are responsible for building that project. So that's our role. Once it's built, then we also take over maintenance of that facility and go forward with it that way. So it's an entirely different role than what we have across the rest of the state, but it's the same in Maricopa or the MAG region, as well as down in Tucson for Pima County down there. They're very similar in the planning and programming parts of it. So Audra's going to be the one that's going to have to kind of answer those kind of questions. Okay. But when they do come up with it, then it rolls into our realm, and that's where we take off.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. Well, there's so much development that is going on. So I'll kind of volleyball the back and forth between the two of you. For initially, we're seeing the I-17 expansion, I-10 corridor. There's expansion there. Looks, we've got more extension on the I-10 going south towards Tucson. Obviously it's pulling not only Maricopa County, but we're seeing Pinal County is going to benefit from a lot of this also. Do you want to expound on that in regards to what the overall plan, Audra?
So,
yeah.
You bet. I can kind of go through that. So you mentioned we have 3 very large projects going right now that are affecting the Valley. So I'll start off with I-17. So I-17 is actually a really exciting project because there's a portion of it that is brand new to actually transportation across the country. We're taking and putting in what are called flex lanes, which are normally used in an urban environment where you have a real heavy one-way traffic load during peak hours going in one direction, which is usually like a morning, and then it reverses in the afternoon coming back the other way. Well, on I-17, it's a little bit different in that we see very heavy traffic patterns, especially during the summer months, headed north out of the Phoenix region, headed up I-17. And that usually occurs on Thursdays and Fridays. And then Sundays are a real big day coming back south. So what we're doing with these flex lanes is we're actually adding an extra lane going north and south. So we're adding capacity to I-17 itself. But we're also adding these flex lanes, which will be utilized on Thursdays and Fridays where we have a heavy northbound traffic. They'll be opened up northbound. So that'll give us additional capacity headed north. On Sundays, where we have that big push coming back south, they'll be opened up southbound. So they're reversible lanes. It's like I said, it works really well in an urban environment. This is one of the first times it's being utilized or it works real well in an urban environment. It's the first time it's being used in a rural environment for this type of traffic. So we're really excited about getting this put in. One of the other biggest pros about putting this in is we have had, when we have accidents on I-17 in the past, we have extended delays and huge queues of traffic that get stopped on I-17. And the reason being is because in some cases, the roadway is bifurcated and therefore there's not an easy route to be able to move traffic around. And so it's been a big issue in the past. With the flex lanes, we'll now be able to actually change the directions on those or move traffic over so that we can take and eliminate those queues. So that's one of the really big factors. And not only that, but it's not only just on the heavy days, but it's at any time of use on I-17. So that's going to be a big one there. Construction right now is going very well on I-17. If anybody's driven up through there, you'll see a tremendous amount of construction that's going on. It's spread through almost the entire length of the corridor, which is about 16 miles. And so there's tons of work going on. We're still doing blasting at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you're going up through there, you're going to wind up getting stopped for a little bit. But it's been going very well. Contractors making extremely good progress, and it's on schedule. So we're doing really good with that. The next big project we have is the I-10 Broadway Curve project. And that project is also going on schedule. That one of our biggest concerns when we first started that was traffic management for that project. And we have been able to, with a lot of advance notice, with a lot of public notice, we've been able to keep that traffic flowing. Weekends are unfortunately sometimes a little bit difficult because we have to close lanes during weekends, but that's the only time that we can actually get main or work done on the main line itself, or bridges crossing over the main line. So that's why we've been having those kinds of closures. But work is also progressing very well on it. We're doing really well. Anybody driving through there is now getting ready to see some of the major flyover bridges that are under construction. Those will continue as we go forward. Those are the biggest structures that we still have to do on that section of the corridor itself. So going real well. We're, like I said, we've been maintaining traffic on the main line, and we will continue to maintain that traffic on the main line through the entire construction. The next big project we have, as you mentioned earlier, is the I-10 corridor, which is we're calling the Wild Horse Pass corridor, that runs from the State Route 202 or Loop 202 all the way south down to just north of Casa Grande. And what we're going to be doing on that is widening that stretch through the Gila River Indian community from 2 lanes in each direction to 3 lanes in each direction. We're also upgrading all of the interchanges through that stretch. So Wild Horse Pass interchange is going to get upgraded. The 347 Quinn Creek is going to get upgraded. Briggs Road is going to get upgraded. Casablanca is getting upgraded, as well as several other cross bridges that continue as we go south. So it's a big project. We've got some really good stakeholders on the project. MAG is a major part of that. So is the Gila River Indian community. We've been working together really well on it. We've got the major design concept report almost finished. The NEPA documents are almost completed on it. We're looking forward to applying for a grant coming up here in the next month or two for the last final bit of funding that we need for the entire corridor. So once we get that, whether we get it or not, it's gonna we'll still be proceeding with the project, but it would be nice to have the entire corridor funded before we start. So that's kind of the big things that we have going right now.
Yeah, it's exciting to see all the development. And you're right, I've been up the I-17 and I was shocked at how much progress they've made in just really a short amount of time. One of the questions in the chat is regarding the 202, kind of where they intersects with 163rd Avenue and Grand. You know, I know that that's a newer development, the 303, and there's a lot of development going on out there. And I'm not sure if Audra or Gregory, you want to address this. Obviously, with TSMC coming in, that's going to bring more people to that area. Any feedback for us in regards to how that's progressing or what the long-term plans are for the 303?
I'll let Audra do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have are very aware of some of the constraints out on the Grand 303 163rd and hear a lot of feedback. We are about to kick off a study actually for that corridor to better identify long-range transportation needs and identify the improvements necessary. We've been working closely with ADOT in anticipation of the BNSF facility, for which is mentioned in the chat as well. All future investments are dependent, however, on the continuation of the dedicated half-cent sales tax, known today as Prop 400. The three projects that Greg just referenced all have Proposition 400 funding. Those are tax supported by Maricopa County residents in one way, shape, or form, notably the Broadway curve, which is the largest reconstruction project in state history, made only possible because of the extent or Proposition 400. We've spent a lot of time looking at future needs, especially recognizing, as you are all acutely aware, Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the country and has been for quite some time. Our planning area is over 10,000 square miles. You know, we'd be the 25th largest state if we were our own state. And so the responsibilities and needs for a fast growing community such as our region are vast. And so we've built a plan. We've identified needs, including in the Grand Avenue area, that final TI with Loop 303 as well, the build out traffic interchange out in the Northwest Valley as well. Those are all improvements that are contingent on the extension of Proposition 400. And in order to be able to get that plan to voters of Maricopa County, we need to seek that permission from the Arizona legislature. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful in that endeavor, but continue to work and seek partnership with our legislative partners to be able to ensure voters have a chance as soon as possible to weigh in on that important measure. In addition to those improvements, we plan for the next 25 years, really building out of the freeway network, finishing out the final general purpose lanes on the existing system, finishing out the Loop 303, a final interchange, of course, with I-17, important in recognition, as you've mentioned, Stacey, of TSMC and that growing economic investment. Finishing out in the Southeast Valley, the SR-24 to its final condition, building SR-30, also known as the I-10 reliever in the Southwest Valley. I-10 West is our most congested corridor in the region, as I'm sure this audience acutely experiences. SR-30 would help to relieve that traffic impact you see on that corridor. Particularly helping with freight movements around the metropolitan core, and certainly to unlock some of the economic potential we see interest in the Southwest Valley. That's a facility that's about $6 billion and counting, and will only be able to be developed if we're able to extend the dedicated half-cent sales tax. We also have planned complete reconstruction of the I-17 facility. For those of you who travel Central Phoenix, that's our really our basic infrastructure. It's our initial major high capacity infrastructure for the region. You know it's showing its age. Greg hears that feedback often as well as we do. And so we've set aside over $2 billion for the complete reconstruction of that facility and an addition of another lane. So there are a considerable number of improvements that we see and know are needed over the next 20 and 25 years. But as I mentioned, in order to be able to deliver those transportation investments, we're going to need the legislature and governor to deliver enabling legislation so that voters here in Maricopa County have the option to be able to weigh in.
Yeah, I think we're going to start to hear more and more about Prop 400, and I encourage all of our attendees to really get well educated on that. I moved out here in the early or mid 80s. And we're running out of financing. And so Prop 400 is so critical to making sure that our infrastructure continues to be taken care of and continues to expand. We've got a couple of really great questions in the chat. Gregory, back to the construction that's currently going on. What are the time frames in regards to I know I think I-17 was a couple of years, but could you shed a little bit more light on time frame in regards to these improvements that we've got going on?
So on I-17, we're still scheduled for completion in 2025. So we've got some time to go on it. The Broadway Curve project itself is also due for completion in 2025. At this point in time, the major I-10 widening project going through the Gila River Indian community, we're shooting for completion of that in 2026. So that's kind of the schedules that we have currently.
Thank you. Audra, one of the questions that just popped up in the chat, which is really good with this, the SR30, will that help alleviate some of the semi trucks that are on our freeways right now?
Yeah, you bet. That's a great question. One of the reasons it was framed as the I-10 reliever is in part because the completion, particularly of the center segment of SR30, the part that connects the Loop 303 to the Loop 202, would enable freight traffic or truck traffic that's either heading to the Port of LA or to Texas to move outside of the city, get around the city, and be able to relieve that pressure and truck movements that you see heading through the core of Phoenix on I-10 specifically.
Great, thank you. That's great to have. Well, Mr. Bagley, I'm going to jump over to you in regards to demographics. Maybe you could share with us what trends that you're tracking and seeing that are happening in our valley.
Sure, absolutely, Stacey. So we look at data all the time in terms of what's happening with demographics, change in employment, and all of that stuff. And this region of the state has been extremely vibrant, and changes have been happening, as you kind of see. We've been growing at about 70 to 80,000. This particular, the Phoenix metro area has been growing at about 70 to 80,000 population on an annual basis. What's very interesting over time is you're seeing that the largest majority of this is population that is moving in. The in-migrants are really what is driving our growth. Our birth rate over time has declined, and our death rate, just because of aging, et cetera, has increased. So really, the growth that we're seeing primarily is driven by people deciding to move into this region for the quality of life, access to infrastructure, jobs, and all of that good stuff. Interestingly, over the past 10 years, we've grown at about 15, 16%, which is a large number. And that accounts for about 85, 86% of the growth in the whole state. So really, this is the heart of growth for this, for the whole state itself. The other trends we're seeing are really, as I kind of indicated, as birth rates are declining, you're seeing that segment of that population under 18 is generally not growing as fast. So that is kind of losing its share. Growth is happening in the 65 or 55 plus. That is the growth share that is happening. Now that causes some concern over time related to labor force, related to the job attraction that we can do, et cetera, on any of those pieces. We're becoming more diverse. We're becoming more diverse, not just, race, ethnicity wise, but, education. We're attracting more population that are higher educated. Income levels are going up. Poverty levels are declining, but the piece of concern in all of this are two things. One, housing affordability, as all of you understand. Housing prices have gone up quite a bit over time. Rental prices are gone up. Our estimates indicate, about 18 to 20% of households living in this region are severely cost burdened. So they are paying about 50% or more for housing off of their household income. So that's a big concern. And the bigger concern as we go look at this is kind of what Audra has alluded to is, extension of the transportation systems, making sure our infrastructure, et cetera, is at par. Actually, is the reason why we're attracting all this growth that stays. Otherwise, you lose that piece of, where that growth is going, because most of the job centers that are growing, whether it's DSMC, Intel, LG up in Queen Creek, Surprise, all of those are dependent upon that good access on the infrastructure side. And then you're seeing that across the board, and that is kind of a bigger concern at this time, is what happens down the road and what would that impact for population attraction.
So to kind of piggyback on that, can you share with us in regards to, the growth areas and where home builders are focusing at? What are you seeing, any significant trends in regards to the growth?
Absolutely. The timing of that question is pretty interesting. We do long range projections every 3 to 4 years. And this is essential because the environment changes, everything is dynamic, everything is changing. At this time, we collect data on, how many housing units are unbuilt, inactive development projects, et cetera. We got a ton of projects that are sitting on the books. I'm not going to give, they're big numbers. But about 80,000 housing units are right now sitting in active development projects. That's a big number of what's coming in, right? We did the long range projections where we're projecting the region to be about 5.8 million in the next 10 years. So that means the same level of growth that is projected to grow. Now, that is all dependent upon this environment, this region, and the state staying as vibrant and as attractive as it has in the past, related to infrastructure access, labor force, et cetera. And those two and the cost of living get to the three pieces. The big areas we're seeing growth obviously are the North Phoenix for the job side of stuff. Really, it's that TSMC project and all the subcontractors, et cetera, related to that. So growth in that area. We're seeing a lot of growth happening in Glendale, in the West Valley. A lot of that related to Goodyear, et cetera, is all related to warehousing, distribution centers, et cetera. We're seeing a lot of warehousing, distribution, manufacturing come in. And then you're seeing a lot of growth happening in Surprise, Buckeye, et cetera, which is generally healthcare, population serving jobs. Long-term, short-term, you're seeing growth that's projected for. There's all kinds of single-family developments happening in the East Valley, whether it's Chandler, Gilbert, Queen Creek, etc. They're the trends are indicating that gets saturated by the end of this decade. You're obviously also seeing a lot of multifamily product coming into the central core for Phoenix downtown, etc. Scottsdale, Tempe, those are the hubs for that. But you're also seeing that spill now into Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale. We've seen all of that product. So, we used to be generally about 20% construction was multifamily. That's about 30-35% now. And that trend is expected to continue. But as I say this, we look at these projections and do that, the caution is there's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of assumptions that are built in, the assumptions that are related to infrastructure access, labor force, affordability, those are all built into the piece.
Yeah, true. And one thing that's consistent is change, right?
Yes.
So Audra, I'm going to volley back to you in regards to, share with us, one of the biggest concerns right now, and I was at a Greater Phoenix Economic Council meeting and they were talking about air quality. Right. And how, and I think in the last couple of weeks, pretty much the majority every day we've had air quality alerts. Can you share with us Meg's approach or thoughts in regards to air quality?
Absolutely. The MAG area is in non-attainment for several federal air quality standards. That includes PM10 or dust, but also, and perhaps more concerning, ozone. We were reclassified recently into a higher level of ozone non-attainment by the EPA. And what that means is the health-based standard of ozone, we have too high of it in concentrations here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. It's not just an urban core issue as well. I think that's an important thing to know. You see our levels of ozone exceeding at monitors, even out in the Tonto National Forest. This is a concern because if we're unable to continue to trend down in our ozone, we put at risk economic development, and GPEC certainly is extremely concerned. If we continue to increase in our designation, what that will require is new industry coming into the region to offset the amount of ozone produced at a higher level than they're actually doing today. That likely will result in permits not being issued if unable to find those offsets. In part, one of the enablers of being able to continue economic development is using the Air Quality Bank to leverage those opportunities. There are no offsets currently in Arizona's bank. And so we're really challenged to find solutions. We're working in partnership with the state, of course, on this important matter, to have a conversation also with the EPA. A lot of the ozone that is being picked up on our monitors here in this region doesn't originate actually within our region. So while we have a number of measures to reduce ozone and have really had over a generation's worth of really good investment in improving our air quality here in the region, for which any of you who've been here for any length of time obviously have already experienced as well. The reality is, if these standards continue to go up, we're really going to be seeing a pinch in our economic development and prosperity, as well as threatening federal highway dollars, which are, of course, instrumental to being able to help deliver transportation projects here in this region. And so we've been working, as I've mentioned, both with the EPA, but also our federal congressional delegation, to better understand how we can find a common sense solution, not only to continue to ensure we have good air quality here in this region, but also aren't penalized for ozone that is transported from other states or countries.
Gregory, one of the questions that came up in the chat is regarding the rubberizing of the freeways. And I know at one time, we had that on the 51. I lived just off of the 51, and it did help, right? Reducing that noise from the freeway. What are the overall plans with ADOT in our freeway system in regards to rubberizing?
So rubberized asphalt, when it's placed over a concrete pavement, when it's first put down, it does make a pretty big difference in noise levels. But as it ages, those noise levels increase. One of the biggest issues we have is also, as it ages, it starts becoming more brittle, it starts breaking up, and consequently we get potholes developed across all of our roadways that have that. So it becomes a maintenance nightmare for us in trying to keep that maintained. So our plan going forward at this point is to actually, as the rubberized asphalt ages to the point where maintenance starts becoming an issue on it, we are removing it down to the concrete and then grinding that surface of the concrete to get as smooth a surface as we possibly can. And that will be the driving surface. The concrete can easily handle the traffic. It actually handles it much better than the rubberized surfacing. So, but the big thing is it really relieves the maintenance costs in doing that. So we went through and did a comparison, did a study to find out just what it would take to actually keep the rubberized surface course in place and maintained versus going ahead and milling it off and resurfacing the concrete surface and then maintaining that concrete surface. And there's a drastic difference in maintenance costs. So we are at this point in time, as that rubberized surface ages out, we're removing it off of our freeways.
So one of the questions that came up in the chat was for Mr. Bagley in regards to what is MAG doing specifically in regards to addressing the rental and housing needs. And there's a second part to this question that came in also, but any feedback for us in regards to what we can see from a proactive standpoint?
So interestingly, MAG does not have a big role on the land use or the housing side of things. Our role is, one, as a regional agency, bringing all our electeds and city managers, et cetera, around and talk about these task projects, these bigger issues. And on the data side, bringing these issues and highlighting them and understanding that. And so that's what we've been doing, bringing that issue of, what is happening in terms of rentals, the fact that any of the newer projects that are getting built, new builds per square foot, are about 30 to 40% higher priced in terms of rental. If you look at housing affordability, those households that live in multifamily rental apartments, et cetera, are the ones that are the most severely cost burdened. though trends are right now with inflation, with interest rates, the market kind of cooling down a little, that we're seeing some trends that are happening on that are declining on that. So our role one is taking the data, bringing that up and providing that to everybody. And I'll put some links on the chat on what data set and where these data sets and analysis are available. Second, bringing it to highlight, to talking about this at our meetings, and we've done that. We are also working with the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, supporting their statewide efforts, discussing that and presenting that at the different legislative committees and bringing that stuff across. The final piece that MAG's been leading for our region is working on a homeless prevention plan, kind of working on, what are the repercussions, what's happening with homelessness, particularly unsheltered population, and what are the needs, what are the solutions? So kind of coming in from a regional perspective and looking at that. So that's generally been the way that MAG's been working on that.
Great. And that kind of led into the next question too, that we had regarding zoning. And I think that the nice thing about having MAG, and I don't know about other major metropolitan areas, but with all of the different municipalities that we have in the Maricopa area, this is really a great place for if you will, for the overall planning and getting everybody moving in and giving feedback in regards to what's needed for the greater area of Phoenix. So it's been nice following MAG's progress over the decades that I've watched. So thank you for all your hard work and efforts. It's definitely paying off. When you look at major metropolitan areas and our overall transportation that we have here, it really makes a huge impact. I know that I didn't present this earlier, but one of the questions that would be good to address too is our light rail system. I know at one time there was talk about taking the light rail out on the I-10 corridor going west. Maybe you could share, if somebody wants to jump in and share some feedback for us in regards to the light rail. I know that's predominantly, Phoenix, Mesa, that area, but any feedback would be good to hear also in that development.
Yeah, certainly, Stacey. The plan that we've developed for the next 20-25 years is multimodal. So while the region has delivered the freeway system, which has really led to a lot of the conversation we've had today, it's not only the freeway network for which the region is delivering. It's not the only solution, of course, in our transportation toolbox, especially as we are now seeing that densification that Anubhav talked about in our urban core. Freeways aren't the best way to move people for every solution. And so rail has been a investment for which is very popular. In fact, when we did our public engagement for the plan development, expanding and improving the quality of transit in this region was really the #1 priority we heard. And so we took that to heart in our plan development process. If you live in the suburbs, you know that there isn't necessarily reach of the transit system out to our far east and far west valleys. We heard that loud and clear was a priority, as well as improving the quality of service, not waiting a half an hour or an hour for a bus, but having that come at a more regular pace. For rail, there are 2 rail extensions included in the plan, both coming out of the city of Phoenix heading west. I-10 is one of those projects. As you travel the I-10 corridor, you probably observe as you get into the urban core, there is a wide median, and that has been reserved for a transit solution now for decades. And so the I-10 West light rail extension is included in that extension of Proposition 400, as is a rail solution a little north of that, heading in and around the Indian School or Camelback area. Phoenix is currently under study for the exact location of that facility. Streetcar, which opened in Tempe last year, has been very popular for moving folks around that extremely dense urban core. And so there are 2 extensions envisioned for it as well, heading east into the city of Mesa. And then we also have 3 bus rapid transit projects identified. They provide the same kind of value as rail. So it's a high capacity bus, often in a dedicated lane. So you're able to move really efficiently and quickly on time. Those projects are included in the plan as well. 35th Avenue in Phoenix, Scottsdale Rural Road connecting Scottsdale, Tempe down to Chandler, as well as one in Mesa.
That's nice. So, and Audra, I know we briefly touched on this back with our emails in regards to water, and maybe one of our panel would want to talk about that. Always is, one of the biggest topics that comes up in regards to water usage and issues. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but when you look at the overall valley and how we're maybe, looking at how we're using our water and how we're conserving water, any insights for us?
Anubhav, you want to do rock, paper, scissors on this? I'll just start by saying, one of the things that, Arizona's historic public policy legacy is tied to is really prudent water management. I think it's something that Arizona doesn't get a lot of credit for. It goes back several decades in establishing prudent water policy. And that includes certainly partnership in the multi-state Colorado River acquisition and development of the CAP with the federal government, as well as the active management areas for which have really helped to ensure we can continue to grow at the pace that we've seen, not just in the last 5 years, but over decades. And so, I think one thing is for certain, you see commitment from leaders across the state to ensure that smart planning into the future continues as it relates to water as well. So Anubhav's done a little bit of work on this as well. You want to chime in?
Sure, thanks, Audra. So yeah, to add to that, yes, Arizona has done a great job. Our cities and towns have been proactive looking at this. So, we got a ton of questions in the past couple of weeks when that report came out about ADWR not giving any more, permits for water use, et cetera, for groundwater. That is still a small segment, but those are areas. There are primarily two cities that get impacted on that. Biggest cities that get impacted are Buckeye and Queen Creek. But we've talked to them as we were working through our projection series. They kind of saw this coming. They've been working on looking at other resources for water, et cetera. There's always the other side is you've got to start looking at prioritizing different water uses, whether it is agriculture versus residential and commercial, industrial, manufacturing, et cetera. For sure, agriculture is one of our largest water uses that is going on at this time. That always has been. And it's a question of, do you start looking at long-term reallocating those resources and figuring things out? We've done a great job. We're talking to CAP, SRP, et cetera. We've done a great job in water conservation, declining our water use per capita, et cetera. So we've done a good job on that. It always comes down to, do we have enough water, or is this a question of where is the water located? And it just gets down to that question, how do you get the water to those areas that may be long-term faster growth areas? You already have a ton of projects that are sitting on the books that are active, that have committed water supply. So I don't see that becoming an issue in the short term, and that gives our cities and towns enough time to prepare for things long-term and start looking at different innovative solutions going forward.
There was a question that just popped up in the chat also in regards to golf courses and pools, additional builders building more pools. Do we see any kind of restrictions in regards to those two areas?
It'd be hard for me to say yes or no to that at this time. I would guess, as you've seen, a lot of the new HOAs are now requiring, turf, not having you put lawns, et cetera, low water use, xeriscape. I think there's a lot that's happening at the local level that will continue going on as our residents and our electeds and managers, everybody, the policymakers, are realizing what is the importance of water, and we come back with that. So I see some of that, but nothing has happened at this time as far as I'm aware. I would say, keep your eyes peeled, see where this goes as we go forward.
Yeah, for sure. I know we've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything as we wrap up the hour that we didn't discuss that you get questioned on frequently that we could share with the group? It looks as though we've answered all the questions in the chat. I don't think I've missed anything there.
I think I would just use this opportunity. There's been a lot of discussion and questions about the transportation infrastructure in our region, and just to emphasize that that dedicated half-cent sales tax, first established by voters back in 1985, is the funding source to deliver future transportation investments. And implore you to have discussions with your elected leaders and legislators on the importance of ensuring that the region can get our plan to you to consider for a vote. If we're unable to do that, it's suffice it to say, not just construction of freeways, but transit, certainly, as well as other improvements, some of those quality of life improvements like bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in your communities will not happen. And at a time where we're experiencing unprecedented growth, where people are wanting to be our neighbors, and you're selling homes too, because people want to come and enjoy this quality of life, it is at risk if we're unable to have that opportunity to get this issue to a ballot.
Mr. Bagley?
Thanks, Audra. And I would just add that I put two links, data.azmag.gov, maps.azmag.gov. Our goal is really take all the data that's available that we are able to put out there without, any kind of, this is raw data sets, what the data is saying from resources that are respected. Have a look at those, basically highlight the issues, and you are able to explore for your own self what the data is telling you. So there is no storytelling there. This is all about what the data is telling, and that's it. It's a great way to kind of build your understanding on certain issues that we're talking about.
Thank you. And yeah, there's a couple of questions in the chat. There is, as Mr. Bagley said, he did put the links in the chat in regards to where you can find information. The other question, thank you, Audra. The other question is there a blog or platform? And maybe to Gregory, do we have anything in regards to the overall ADOT plans? I'm assuming we could go to the Arizona Department, their website for the transportation office.
So yeah, actually we have our long range transportation plan is currently out for comment. So anybody that's interested in that can go to our website to take a look at it. One of the biggest emphasis, and it's been our emphasis for the last 5 years, and it will continue to be, is that of preservation of our roadways. MAG and the PAG down in Tucson are the two regions where there has been in the past funding for expansion, and hopefully so in the future with the passage of 400E. But in the rest of the state, where ADOT does all of the planning and programming, we have actually limited the expansion of projects in Greater Arizona, and have concentrated on preservation of the roadways. It's with the funding mechanism that the state has for state funding through the Highway User Road Fund, there's just not enough money to be able to do a lot of expansions out in Greater Arizona. So consequently, we have concentrated all of our efforts as much as possible on preservation. So that's a big emphasis for us. This past winter was an extremely wet and cold winter. We had a lot of snowfall, and the damage done to our roadways, because they're stressed to start with, was extreme. We were able to take and reconfigure some of our programming. We freed up about $90 million to go out and do some what we call urgent projects, to take and basically they're putting band-aids on roadways to take care of the pothole issues that we had across the state. Some of those projects have already been completed. We're in the process of getting several of them going. There will be another, that was $50 million worth of work. There's another $40 million worth of work that'll occur after the start of the fiscal year in July 1. So it's good that we were able to do that, but again, that's become the emphasis that we have only because of the funding that we currently have within the state. So that's a big issue. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up is, we've sat here and listened about all of the expansion, everything that is the projections that we have going forward and so forth, which is great. But one of the things that we have, actually, there's two things that have occurred over the last year that has put a major dampening of what we can do. One is inflation. The inflationary cost for construction over the past year and a half is for the previous year was at 33%. It has since dropped somewhat, but we're still in the 20% range of inflation for construction work. That's a major killer for a lot of our projects, and it is just a major hiccup when it comes to planning, because we plan these projects out and then suddenly we can't afford them once they get into implementation. So that's a big issue. The other one is workforce. There is so much private development going on that the workforce is getting really depleted. And so when we have these big projects that we've got ongoing right now, workforce becomes a major issue. We construction workers are, when they get put onto the big projects like Intel and the chip manufacturing plants that are going on, it eats away at the availability of other public sector work. And so that's become a big issue with us. That is part of what's driving up costs. So
for sure. Well, there's several comments in the chat applauding all of you, and thankful for the information today. It was truly impactful and helpful for us to understand what's happening in the Valley, especially for our real estate in the real estate industry. So that's kind of education helps us go back to our clients and explain things. So thank you so much for spending this last hour with us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge about the Valley, and kudos to all of you in regards to the leadership that you have provided for our state and our Valley. I feel like we live in one of the greatest cities in the country. So thank you all. I want to again, one more time, thank our sponsors for today. Our next event will be September 14th. We're looking forward to that, and watch for updates in regards to that. And I wish everybody a fantastic summer. Have a nice day, everyone.